This week, I've got an episode that is literally months in the making. Not due to scheduling or difficulty locking down this guest, but because I had audio issues. So I've been working to fix the audio on my end. Everything's good to go now, and I'm really excited to be able to share this conversation with Haas. So I have known, he goes by Haas Bossman online, but Kevin, I've known Kevin for a few years now. We met on Twitter. We were both listeners of the Daily Zeitgeist, which is how we got connected. And then I was also lucky enough to meet him in person at a BLM rally in 2020. So I've known him for a few years. The first podcast I was ever on was actually his show, Breadsheet. So it was fun to catch up with him, get to spend some time just talking. And this is very much the feel of just two friends hanging out. So we talk about everything from Michael Bolton and Tim McGraw to finding your voice or the way to use your voice just by pursuing things, whether those be creative endeavors or whatever is catching your attention at the moment. We talk political music. We talk about a squirrel that is taking up residence in his trash can. And then we get into him fixing guitars. So we cover a lot. We power through all these conversations, very rapid fire. It's just a lot of fun to catch up with Haas for an hour and a half, and I hope you enjoy listening. I'm Zach Van Ness, and this is Grinding to a Halt. That was something I really enjoy about that show is just how strange it is. Because it is just like free association, your brain doing what you want to do, which I like. And then in comparison to what like your YouTube content is, which is very thought out, obviously very heavily researched, very well put together. It's such a juxtaposition. So is there like a lot of freedom in having those two forms of creativity going on?
Yeah, well, like so many other people, I started doing the podcast like when the pandemic hit and because it was like, I think I haven't done put on an episode in a long time. It's probably been a little less than a year.
Mm-hmm.
And so I need to, just post an update to let people know that I am like working on just kind of revamping it. And well, the thing is like it's kind of like what I was saying to you earlier before we started recording that like I just have to make it more complicated every time I do it for some reason. And
Yeah.
so that's the podcast like got kind of out of hand with like it's like once you put this much work and time and love into it, it feels like you're cheating the guest or the listeners or something if you don't like
Yeah.
either keep it the same or up that on the next episode. And I think that's part of what like like it just got kind of more weird over time and more like I'm making, two original, but yeah, by the last like 10, 15 episodes I made, I was doing two original music compositions per episode. And it just took so long to make. And it's like that's on top of also, teaching full time.
Yeah.
And then also trying to get, YouTube off the ground, which that's actually been going deep. Like the channel has been growing steadily, not like
Mm-hmm.
by a lot, but
Yeah.
and so and yeah, it's like when the pandemic hit, before that, I'm just addicted to YouTube. Like 80% of what media I consume probably comes through YouTube. And and I would always, man, I wish I could do like it seems so fun. I would watch these like channels about things that I'm not really super into, but am kind of interested in, like
Yeah.
movie criticism and like breaking down like filmmaking stuff, which is something that just never really interested me that much before. But then some YouTubers, Patrick Willems was one that I started
Mm-hmm.
watching a lot. That and honestly, his channel, I mean, I think his videos are still interesting, but it's his has gotten more and more like professional. Lost, when that happens with creators, it loses a little bit of that like
The
raw,
Edge.
yeah.
Yeah.
But Yeah, that so I remember I would think to myself like, man, I wish I knew about something that I could like make videos about. Like
Yeah.
something that, I could do essays about, but it's like I don't know anything and I don't have any interesting crap to say. But then like I with when I started doing the podcast, I kind of realized, like, interview. I had a little bit of a background interviewing people. I wrote for Flagpole magazine in Athens,
Hmm.
Georgia, for several years right after college. And so interviewed some cool people. The most famous person I ever interviewed, or most legendary person, I guess, George Clinton. Yeah, a Parliament Funkadelic. Isn't that like he
That's
was
got to be surreal. Like,
yeah, he was a weird interview, but a very, very cool, really super nice guy.
that's so funny.
Yeah, but anyway, yeah, so that was really good. I kind of tried to make my thing there, interviewing comedians. So I got
Yeah.
to interview some cool comedians and, wrote about bands and stuff sometimes too. But so yeah, like and, I always enjoyed the conversations, recording that, interviewing people. It's, use it as an excuse to like talk to people. There's this professor that like I have some questions I'd want to ask them, and that was really neat. But the YouTube thing, the thing I kind of realized was like, okay, I what is it that I always think about? Uh, like, and because it's kind of I teach now. I'm teaching sixth grade, but I've
Hmm.
taught writing and English classes and stuff before, and I was actually working kind of more in your field in the couple years before the pandemic in
Yeah.
market copywriting, and so yeah, the advice I would give like, kids especially, but people in general, they're like, the blank page. I don't know what to write. Like I don't have anything to write about. It's like I mean, I know there's this thing going around lately that some people don't have an inner monologue, but you
Hmm.
do have thoughts that you
Yeah.
can translate into
Yeah.
something. And I think there's like, it's just self-doubt wrapped up in that, maybe that just like, well, my thoughts aren't interesting or smart brained or whatever. But I kind of real like one day I was listening to the song by Propagandhi. What's it called? Uh, it's not one that I've made a video about though. I am definitely going to make one about it eventually. Lotus Gate.
Hmm.
Which do you know? Are you familiar with Propagandhi at all?
Only through you talking about them and covering them.
Okay, cool. Yeah, um, well, I know like your music taste kind of leans kind of more into the not new metal, but newer sort of like
Yeah, like
takes on
metalcore.
metal. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Propagandhi is they definitely have a lot of those, I think, influences in their sound, especially like their bass player writes like maybe half the songs, and his stuff is a lot more sort of like nuevo thrash or something maybe.
Yeah.
But they're very like thrash metal infused. And I remember and they have this song on their, I think it's 2012 album. It's called Failed States. It's called Lotus Gate.
Hmm.
And the lyrics were just like so dense and interesting. And I kind of was thinking, like, man, I'm always just like thinking about songs in general. I've written many songs in my life, and
Yeah.
not really that much recently, but um, and like, I'm obsessed with political music, especially political punk. And so I started writing about this song, Lotus Gate, just literally, I was like, maybe I'll put this as a blog post. And
Yeah.
I still have it in my notes app, I guess. So maybe I can use, I haven't read it in a few years, but maybe I could use it as a script sometime. But it's, and that song is just so like, the song is about trauma, and it kind of weaves, it goes back and forth between talking about like the singer, the songwriter's like personal trauma, and how like all of these things in his life, the dark things that he's witnessed and stuff that have just like kind of changed the way that he looks at things.
Hmm.
And then but it draws this parallel with like almost like historical trauma, and how like we sort of and the title of the song Lotus Gate is it's a reference to, I believe, the way, Chinese foot binding,
Mm-hmm.
I think like whenever women who had their feet bound would walk with this weird sort of like, you could tell that they had their feet bound, and they called that the lotus gait, as in
Mm-hmm.
Gait. And so it's like this thing of like you're shaped and twisted by these external forces
Mm-hmm.
that cause you to stumble around in this way that like makes you kind of blind to everything, the bigger picture around you and stuff. And and I just, as I was kind of thinking about that song, I was like, I want to write this down. Like I just had an urge to start typing it out just to kind of get the thoughts out of me.
Yeah.
And then like I don't know, it was good while later when I was like, and that was kind of fun. I enjoyed doing that, and just thinking about that song. And I always, that's my inner monologue a lot of the time anyway,
Mm-hmm.
contemplating lyrics and stuff. And I was like, shit, I guess I don't know. I know there's one podcast that I haven't really listened to. I've heard a couple episodes called "This Is Revolution."
Mm-hmm.
That's about political music, or has sort of a that theme in it. And I think they sort of focus more on hip hop.
Yeah.
So I thought there was, and then, there's a Propagandy podcast that right as they were starting, Breadsheet was starting my show. And and so we connected really early on.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, I've been a guest on their show a couple of times. I made a couple of Propagandy covers for them. And one specifically I made for like a cover album that they put out. And so they kind of inspired me because both of the guys who hosted that, it's only one of the guys I think that does it now, because the other guy, life stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
But both of them were teachers, a middle school and a high school teacher. And I was kind of just like, I saw that they were putting all of this work into this podcast, this like labor of love. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that really was a huge inspiration to me, that like, I just want to do this. And it really is like, you have to find, and it's kind of cliche, but like, you know, I know like nowadays there's this thing, people especially talk about this with kids, that like people just want to be famous for being famous.
Yeah.
People just want to be influencers. And just like, I just want to, it's just so funny when the kids will say like, I want to be a Twitch streamer. Um, like, well, I would think you either have to be like, being a Twitch streamer, you have to be really like clever and witty and funny if you want to like stream yourself playing video games, right?
Yeah.
And I mean that's another, like whenever I'm sure you were the same way, like when you first heard about that there are kids today are watching other people play video games on the internet. What was your first when you first heard about that? What did you think?
So it's confusing to me, but in the same way that as someone who doesn't watch sports, I find
Mhm.
watching sports the exact same, because you're not playing it. You're not there. You're not doing it. So like the emotional investment in watching someone do a speed run of GoldenEye and watching
Mhm.
someone play the World Series, I'm like, those are the same in my brain. I don't differentiate the two. So like the growth of it and the popularity, I get, for the same reason I get that sports is big. But for me personally, I'm like, I don't want to watch someone play video games. I would rather just play video games. But like my son will watch people play video games all day. He loves it.
Uh, Yeah, and that's, I mean, I'm sure when I first heard it, I was a little bit more fake edgy or something. When I was younger, I guess, 'cause like I was like a huge obsessed with George Carlin, and I was like, I went through the big edgy atheist phase and stuff.
Yeah,
But like I would always have like, I have strong opinions about like stupid bullshit that I don't actually really care about deep down.
yeah.
Like, and so it's like I don't know what that is of like, you just, I guess, young man wanting to, but
I think it's fragile male ego, like the
yeah.
need to have an opinion and that
Hmm.
opinion be right when it's something that is completely objective to a person. It's a, it's very much something that we all go through in some phase, in some form. Mine was
Music, the
movies.
movie
I was a
phase.
pain in the
Oh,
ass about movies.
how
Movies are,
so?
well, just to the point of being like, well, you shouldn't like that movie because it's not a good movie. And I'm like,
Mm.
well, there is no good movie. Someone either enjoys a movie or they don't. There's plenty of movies I watch. Chopping Mall is not a good movie. I really enjoy Chopping Mall.
It's
S
fantastic. I love that one. Yeah.
yeah, but it's a bad. I'm aware it's a bad movie. That
Mm.
doesn't change my enjoyment of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I definitely have tons of things like that. And then, with the streaming and sports, completely, see eye to eye with you on that. Like, um, there is, I was to veer off for just a second here about
Mhm.
sports. I was just telling some other teachers the other day about this, which, they're always talking about sports and like the guys, especially when we're at the end of the day, like at the bus waiting for the kids to herd them into the buses. We, they'll be talking about sports and stuff. And I was the other day talking to them about how, like, I've always been like kind of a shitty little asshole about sports and been like, God, it's so stupid. People who like sports are such dumb asses. And,
Yeah.
they, I'm sorry, can I curse on this? I
Oh
imagine.
yeah, no. You can say whatever you want. You're good.
Okay. Um, yeah, so what, there is literally one time in my life, maybe other than like when I was actually playing Little League,
Hmm.
or something, when I actually understood why people are so obsessed with sports. And that was, are you still in Georgia, like the Atlanta area?
Oh no, no, we're in Maine now. We
Oh,
moved to
okay.
Maine. Yeah.
Oh, well, that sounds nice. I bet it's cold.
It was -11 yesterday.
Jesus. Um,
Those are the days when I regret it.
mm,
In the summer, when it's not like 100% humidity and 100 degrees, you're like, oh, this is pretty nice. And the fall is great. But then there was one day last year, last winter, it was -40 with the wind. And I was like, I don't think people are supposed to live here. I...
man, that's insane. I mean, I do prefer cold. Like,
Mhm.
I would rather live in a place that gets super cold than a place
Yeah.
that like gets really hot for extended periods of time, which why do I
Yeah.
still live in the South? Because my girlfriend, her bar license is in Georgia. That is really
Yeah.
the only reason I still live here. But the and we've been together long enough that we're, planning to eventually get married. So,
Yeah.
and getting certified to practice law in a different state is just, I don't want her to have to go through that anytime soon.
Yeah. Yeah. Understandable. But no,
But
we're not in Georgia anymore.
So, but I guess you would have been here when, yeah, I think it was like 2016,
Hmm.
2017, maybe, when the Falcons played the Patriots in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I went over to some friends who were watching it, and to their place. And, I was like, I kind of had to be dragged along by my girlfriend. And I was like bored and kept, stepping outside and, smoking cigarettes and listening to music and stuff. And at some point, I came in later in the game and saw that the Falcons were like destroying the Patriots. And I was kind of started like watching it and getting into it. And I was like, kind of started, I'm just like, if I'm going to root for somebody, I'll root for the Falcons. They are the
Hmm.
underdogs, and that's most importantly, but also they're, it's my home team. So,
Yeah.
sort of. And but then that game, I don't know if you remember this, but it was like they were winning by, I don't remember how much, but it was like, like 60-7 or something. I don't even know if it's possible for those to be the exact numbers, but but like right at the end of the game, I mean, I think it was like something, just a few seconds left on the clock. The Patriots had this like insane comeback, and I was standing up like as they were like, and the Patriots ended up winning the game.
Yeah.
And with like seconds left on they completely turned it around. And I was like standing up, like yelling at the TV. And I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. I understand why people get so worked up about sports.
Hmm.
Like, it's not, I still am not going to like get into them now. But, and I think, something similar. I heard an interview with Trey Parker of South Park fame,
Hmm.
who he was talking about Twitch streaming. And I think, if you know anything about him, you would probably think like he would be like, "That's fucking stupid kids watching other people play video games." And he did say, he was like, he's like, my stepson plays or watches Twitch and people streaming games. And I remember when he first told me that, I was like, "What? That sounds so boring. Like, why are you doing
Yeah.
that?" And then I watched it with him, and I get it. Like, I understand why they watch it. It's not watching someone play a video game.
Hmm.
It's commentary. It's somebody like fucking around. It's a hang,
Yeah.
like you're hanging out with somebody, and the successful Twitch streamers are the people who are just like clever and funny and it's not about the game most of the time. But if it
Mm-hmm.
is about the game, I imagine it's like because they're the best at the world, and it's like in the world, it's
Yeah.
really impressive to watch them do it.
Yeah, no. So two things to what you were saying. So like the sports side of it, and this actually carries over into the Twitch side. It makes sense to me in the aspect of it is a micro community that's built for a short amount of time. Like if you're all sitting in a room watching a football game, that is a micro community, and as humans we crave that. Even people that are loners still crave some sort of community to be a part of, even if it's just for 2 hours while you watch a game. But then the Twitch side of it, so like me and all my friends when we were teenagers, we would have LAN parties and we would play Halo and we'd have 4 Xboxes set up and everybody would be in a different corner and everybody's just giving everybody shit and then you wait for your turn for the controller to be passed. And since everybody's not sitting in a room together, Twitch kind of has that same feel of like, yeah, you're watching someone play, but it has that same feeling of sitting in the room with someone waiting for your turn to hold the controller.
Hmm.
Where everybody's just talking. You've got the chat going. You know, people are giving people shit, or people build like these weird communities within those chats in certain Twitch streams. Where like, there's hey, this guy's gonna show up, or this guy hasn't been here in a while and now he's back, and everybody's happy to see them come back to the chat. So these weird micro communities that have formed around very niche interests, which is great. I love that. It helps people find connection and community.
Yeah.
I still don't want to watch people play video games, but I get it. I do get it.
Yeah, it's like, I'm gonna hit record on this. I was just trying to pull up Logic or something to just like
Hmm.
get my end of the audio, but I'm just gonna record through Zoom just so that you have a backup, I guess.
Cool.
At least for this, from this point on. Um but yeah, that and it's kind of, I growing up as like someone really into punk rock and leftist politics, I I have always thought of myself as somebody who is very accepting, very tolerant of
Hmm.
other ways of viewing the world, someone who not just tolerant, like values every perspective.
Yeah.
And then, but it's like I kind of realized that the older I got that like I'm not like that. Like I'm not valuing the perspective of the people who I don't like. I'm not valuing the perspective of people who are into sports or
Hmm.
just stuff that I'm not interested in. And so I've tried to open up more to just like, different ways of being. Like there's a lot of ways of living in this world that are acceptable, that are,
Yeah.
and it's just, everybody's just trying to, it's like what when people are, people who are like anti-trans bigots or anti-LGBTQ, like the thought I always have is like, man, once you've been alive for a little bit, you really start, or I anyway, started to realize like how just it is really hard to find happiness in this
Yeah.
world. There's a lot of ugliness, a lot of suffering and pain, and you and to see someone who has found happiness with whatever that is, like
Hmm.
I realized I'm a woman, I have been a woman my whole life or whatever, like, and to begrudge them for that, it's just like such a waste of energy. And also like that's a you problem. If you're
Yeah.
begrudging somebody, it's like but so it's like trans people or any LGBTQ is like a big example, obviously, for right now. But it's like I could
Yeah.
apply that same logic to people who are just into things that I'm not into.
Absolutely. No, even stupid stuff. Like, I have a lot of tattoos, and tattoos are a big problem for some people. And, like, it's not something that impacts literally anyone's life at
Hmm.
all. Why do you care if someone has a tattoo? For me, it's just they want to take away the happiness that someone else has found because they can't find that happiness within themselves. Like other people finding comfort in who they are and realizing who they are and living as who they are is somehow an attack on them because they are incapable of that. Typically, because they're incapable of looking inward enough to figure out who they actually are or reckon with the things they have done that they are unhappy with. Because that's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to do those things. So it's easier to just take that discomfort you have internally and project that outward. Of I have this hole in me that person seems to have found what works for them. I should definitely take that away.
Yeah, it's I don't know if that's technically as projecting,
Mm,
but there, and it's like with I guess when we talked about evangelical and like just the church and everything, having grown up, I didn't really grow up like super strict religious or anything,
yeah.
and I sort of got out. I stopped being religious like totally by the time I was like 12 or 13. Um, but I just grew up in a community in the rural South, and just saw a lot of like judgmental people. I was so
Yeah.
turned off by that, and so like I just thought it was so disgusting. And it's like, the solution to that is not to carry that same attitude over into like judging other groups of people,
Yeah.
or projecting that same judgment back onto the people who are like super religious.
Hmm.
It's like I'll judge you if your ideology involves like hating people or
Yeah.
something like that. But if you've found a way, that does tie into also the atheism thing of how like I sort of just like calmed down on that and just like, man, if being religious, if you're not hurting anybody, like just to do it if that makes
Yeah.
you happy. And I know like I might in the details of it, I might have like think that it's maybe not totally healthy or something like that. And that opinion might be somewhere in me, but it's also not really my place to tell other people how to live.
Yeah. You're not actively trying to dampen the way they live their lives because you disagree with it. Um, yeah, I
Yeah.
think you and I very similar, and we talked about this when I was on Breadsheet. I'm just like, hey, just do no harm. As long as your beliefs aren't
Mhm.
impacting other people in a negative way, or you're not trying to control the lives of other humans because of something you believe. Like, yeah, go for it. That's good. If you find fulfillment in it, great. I find some weird form of fulfillment by just talking to people on Zoom. Uh, there's no
Well,
reason
glad to
behind
help.
it. But for me, this is like a nice outlet. Makes me feel connected to people. There's no rules. There's no guidelines. It's whatever I want it to be. And I like that as just a form of release to escape, the day to day grind of, of what we have to do to survive.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to, and I mean, I have been on some level trying to work toward, just being able to do this or do make YouTube videos, make
Yeah.
podcasts, would play live streaming music. Oh, that would be the best thing. Like if I could actually get enough people watching that to be able to do that for a living. I mean, mainly that would just be a great one because it's not so time consuming. Like I could do that would take an hour or two out of my day every day.
Yeah.
But and it's just I haven't been playing live music the past like decade, and
Hmm.
I've really really missed it. And so getting back into playing on the live streams at least and recording and making music, and nowadays I mostly post like silly crap that I make, but
Yeah. Yeah, I've been
I
watching the Chronicles of that squirrel in your trash can.
uh
So
yeah, that little guy. I wonder if I could see him right now. I can see the trash can from my window. The 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 lid to the trash can is still open. I guess I should have gone and closed that, but I don't want to trap him in there. But he's the one. I was closed before, so I guess the squirrel opened it. I don't know. I didn't know a squirrel was that strong, but um, and I've also been doing, I mean, for the past, 10, 15 years, like I'll make these like stupid little silly songs. I started doing these ones that are like I wanted to make like a parody rock band that is like not like a parody of the kind of rock music that I really listen to, but like of very sort of hollow, I think of like AC/DC type rock. I'm
hmm
not like I don't not hating on AC/DC. I mean, it's fun music, but like
Yeah.
the I just I love that it's funny to me like songs that are about nothing, and it's just
Yeah.
like you're singing about like you're gonna get it and have it tonight and stuff. So I like have a bunch of these little dumb rock songs I made about like, we're gonna do it tonight and having it all and stuff. And then I started doing these country parodies that I and essentially just like trying to make them sound like this could be maybe a real country song.
Yeah.
I wrote a few like that. I came up with a formula for, I mean, I didn't come up with it. I recognized the pattern in hit pop country songs. And
Hmm.
it's like you get some kind of cliche or like just some kind of phrase or saying that people are familiar with. Then you got three verses and or maybe two verses and a bridge and a chorus. And each verse recontextualizes the cliche and the chorus does something with it. So it's like you don't take the girl. I think I made a TikTok about that a while back. That that Tim McGraw song, Don't Take the Girl.
Not familiar, no.
Oh, I mean,
No.
I would think did you grow up in the South?
Yeah, but country is a genre I have as a whole stayed away from.
It's hard to avoid, I would think, but I mean, it depends on what your parents listen to. It's like, well, really growing up around here, my parents are older than most
Hmm.
of my friends were. I was born when my dad was 40. And
Yeah.
so, my parents listened to different music. Like my dad, both of them only listen to country music.
Yeah.
And they also, introduced me to older music then, but all my friends, their dads all listen to classic rock growing up. It's fucking,
Yeah.
Leonard Skinner and
Yeah, just Eagles in Boston all day long.
yeah, that kind of stuff for sure. And because it's like, they all grew up, were teenagers in the 70s. My dad
Yeah.
was a teenager in the 60s, but yeah, so what are we talking about? Music.
Country songs, the country song formula.
Oh right. Yeah, it's so the song Don't Take the Girl, I'll just give you a little clinic here by Tim McGraw is it's the first so it's a song about it's like the first verse is about a little boy who is going fishing with his dad. And then he says, and then a little girl comes up to go,
Hmm.
and she has a fishing pole and wants to go fishing with them. It's a really sad song. You should listen to it. Um, and I mean, it's so corny, but like, I like corny shit sometimes.
Yeah.
And the boy is like, no dad, don't take the girl, I don't want you to like take the girl with us on the fishing trip. So that's what
Hmm.
the don't take the girl means in that one. In the second verse, it's he has grown up and is dating this same girl, and
Yeah.
they get mugged in an alley, and he's like, take anything that you want. I'm getting like choked up thinking about this. It's such a
This.
it's such a sweet song, but it's like, take my watch, take the keys to my car, just don't take the
Yeah.
girl. And then
Yeah.
the third verse, she has like cancer or something and she's dying, and he's like
Hmm.
praying to God to not let her die, saying
Yeah.
don't take the girl. And it's like it's one of those things where it's like I appreciate it equally in an ironic way and an unironic way, like how
Yeah.
corny it is and how like it's also kind of clever. And
Yeah, no,
so
it is good story structure. You've got a
mhm.
three-act structure to a song that all connects and makes sense. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I get it.
yeah, and it has that tied together with and then there's also a lot of examples of it in pop country that are like
Yeah.
really funny, and they're really stretching the cliche to fit
Yeah.
different things. And it's like always though, the bridge or the third verse has to be something about God. You have to be praying, you have to be, it's got to reach that level of stakes in the third
Yeah.
verse.
And then the key change comes in after the bridge, right?
Oh
That.
yeah, of course. That I was just doing a song the other day. I was trying to learn, something else that I appreciate equally unironically and ironically is Michael Bolton's music.
Hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I don't see how anybody could listen to him and not just be impressed with how amazing of a singer he is. His voice
Yeah.
literally, it sounds like a horn. His voice sounds like an instrument to me. But and there's this hilarious song that I listen to kind of a lot. I'd kind of be embarrassed to like really, if you could count up how many times I've like listened to this song in the past year. It's called Steel Bars
Hmm.
by him. That I was like kind of trying to learn. I have to tune it down way, way lower because like I can't sing anywhere near as high and like
Yeah.
powerfully as he can. But that's got like one of the craziest like half step key changes at the end of the song. Hey, folks listening out there, check out Steel Bars. It's hilarious and it's awesome. So,
I'll link it in the notes. May as well.
okay. Yeah. I don't even know if there's a music video. I'm gonna, after this chat, that's the first thing I'm gonna do is Steel Bars music video.
I mean, that's a good segue into. you trying to create all these songs, trying to do covers, making, parodies of songs. And also you're a teacher, which is an unbelievably difficult job in and of itself, and an unbelievably time consuming job. A Twitter mutual of ours, Wack Nicholson, he was the teacher up until last year, and he put out a YouTube video just kind of explaining, hey, this is what it's actually like to be a teacher. Like, this is what it's like dealing with parents, students, and admin. Like, these are the struggles of it. And I know it is, a 60, sometimes 70 hours a week job. So, how do you balance that with still trying to do creative things without it feeling like you're burning yourself out by doing those things outside of work? Because creating is very time consuming. Even this show, which is minimal lift by design, an
Mm.
episode, we'll talk for an hour, and then I have to edit, and then I have to throw my music and everything in there, and then I have to pull some videos for all of my socials. So an hour long episode can still take me 6 or 7 hours to actually do all the work that needs to be done. And my show is minimal lift. I don't really create anything new. I'm not writing songs like you were. So how do you keep all those things going without it just feeling like you're drowning? Or does it
So
feel like you're drowning?
I mean, it does. I've felt I've I listened to a couple episodes of the show so far. I
Mhm.
haven't listened. I'm not completely up to date on it.
Mhm.
I really like the one with what's the guy's name from the medical podcast?
Oh, Kave.
Yeah, Kabe.
Kave's
Uh,
great.
yeah, I like that show too. House of Pod.
Yeah.
He yeah, he's a pretty funny guy. But the so yeah, I knew you were gonna ask that. And I'm like, I mean, really, it's just I feel like I always feel like I'm not doing any one of the many things that I do as well as I could be, like
Yeah.
so that I I every day I get up at like 5:30 a.m. and get try to spend some time in the morning getting woken up before I have to shower and go into work. And now that I'm teaching middle school, I'm actually thinking about this is my first year teaching middle school. It's only my fourth year teaching public school in general.
Hmm.
And between 2015, 2016 was my first year, and then I was copywriting for a few years and doing other stuff, and then got back into it 2.5 years ago, and was teaching ninth grade, 10th grade. And then this year, teaching middle school is like, this is so much more work. It's exhausting, like as you can imagine,
Yeah.
been in middle school. It's exhausting, like in with just interacting with the kids all the time.
Yeah.
They're just such a combination of energetic and needy. They're just like still little kids in a lot of ways, which is part of what's like kind of fun about it. Like I do like the reason I wanted to try middle school is I was living down in Albany, Georgia, working down there, and I was one day a week I would do guitar lessons at a local music shop, and
Hmm.
most of my students were like older elementary, younger middle school age, and I just thought I was like really good with them, and just really they're funny. I've worked with really little kids before too, and I've always thought like I have trouble relating to a lot of adults. And
Yeah.
I kind of, in the sense of like the curiosity, the imagination, and just like the free association type thing that kids have. Like, I just think
Hmm.
it's adorable and it's fun. And so that's why I went into teaching middle school. And as far as like the kids, I do love interacting with the kids. I don't mind the fact that it is exhausting to actually
Yeah.
do the work there. It's just that I don't know if it's a middle school thing or just the school that I happen to get a job at. It's just there's so much more like paperwork type clerical stuff to do
Yeah.
than I ever had with teaching high school. And I think a big part of that is that like this is an age where kids are getting funneled into things like special ed and these other things that they've added since I was in school of like
Hmm.
not you wouldn't call it special ed necessarily, but it is like a little intervention program and stuff. And I've got a lot
Yeah.
of those students. And so that require it's all there's like federal laws and stuff that require you to do a lot of documentation on that stuff. And I just
Yeah.
can't handle like it's too much crap for me to do. I feel like with that element of this job, I'm really like I was barely able to podcasts, make YouTube videos, make music and stuff when I was teaching high school. And I think it was a pretty lax teaching job, relatively speaking, in terms of like
Yeah.
I didn't have to do that much stuff outside of the classroom. And, I mean, it was still, an extra maybe 10 hours a week on top of what was in my contract. And I'm still probably spending about that much time, an
Hmm.
extra 10 to 20 hours a week on it, in addition to what's in my contract. But, and that's sort of an unspoken thing with teachers is that
Yeah.
we all know we're labor violated all the time.
Of course. Yeah.
But, and people, I think without even realizing it a lot of times, people take advantage of that. The fact that it's like they know teachers don't do it for the money.
Yeah.
So they're like, work you even more. And there's a teacher shortage now. So like there's more crap for us to do. But so now I feel like what's happening with me, not too much detail about my job probably, but the uh I have all that like extra stuff to do that now is taking away from planning and grading
Hmm.
and communicating with parents and stuff like that that I was able to keep somewhat, steady
Yeah.
before. So I'm thinking about, transferring to going back to high school next year. The deadline for that is 10 days from now, so I need to figure that out soon. But um yeah, so but I love the age group though, and I
Yeah.
do prefer in a lot of ways working with these younger kids. They're a lot sweeter, it's like the kids will come up and like hug me and stuff like that. And it's
Yeah.
just a more pleasant, like fun environment. I mean, kids, I've been cussed out by like three sixth graders this year, and then each time afterward, it's like, their mom or somebody like put them up to apologizing to me,
Yeah.
and they'll come in and they're just so sweet and like will just give me a hug and write me a little apology letter and stuff. And it's like almost it's funny, it's like some of those like poignant moments are going to come and I remember, that one time when that kid called me a white fucker, and then because I threw away his Takis. I'm like
That's pretty great. I don't think he should apologize for that. That's a good one.
Yeah, it was. I mean, for real. Now I'm like, I have that story for the rest of my life, and I want to, make it clear to people at the time. It's like, I'm not. I had, if that's like, there's two or three things that you absolutely always have to like report to an
Yeah.
administrator. It's
Yeah.
like cussing out a teacher is one of them, and fighting, of course, and so. But like, so. But it's funny, and I didn't, and the fact that he was like he brought race into it, and it's like that made it funnier to me. And
Yeah.
I was like trying telling like the counselors this. I work my school I work at is like I'm one of maybe three white people that work there, and
Hmm.
even there aren't, it's like pretty much all black people. And I was like talking to them after that, like, look, I mean, I don't think it was like he was being hateful or anything. I
Yeah.
wouldn't even really consider that like racist necessarily. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just, and so I'm not like offended or upset about that or anything, but it does kind of worry me. I'm more worried about like the impulse control there. Because,
Oh
as we
yeah.
all know, if you're I mean, it's not fair, it's unjust, it's bullshit. But if you are especially a black male teenager
Hmm.
in America, you got to be careful about what you say to people because it's like people, black folks, like talk about the talk
Yeah.
that they have to give their kids. And I mean, I just don't envy. I mean, I have to do it to an extent too, working with, at the moment, mostly black kids, but like threading that needle of like, yes, it's bullshit that the cops are allowed to kill you, basically.
Yeah.
But also, I don't want you to die,
Yeah.
so do what they say. So, and we'll fight it later. Like things need to change, but like, and I don't know. Also, that's a part of why it's so important for them to get an education,
Absolutely.
because it's like it or not, the this upcoming generation are the ones that have a much more difficult needle to thread, I think, than obviously I was talking about the MLK Day just happened, so we were like reading some of his stuff, and you know and was one of the things that I talked about with my students was how like um you the like you're in an unjust system,
Hmm.
and you and it feels like you need to lash out at it.
Yeah.
uh but back in the 60s, when the civil rights movement was going, like they had a much more dangerous on the whole, I would say, like it was much more like deadly,
Yeah.
and physically threatening to be a civil rights protester. And now I think, though, it's a lot more complicated. You have to, it's like people talk about how like the left has a communication issue because the concepts are a lot more complex that we have to communicate to people, as
Yeah.
opposed to the right, which appeals to people's like base sort of
Lizard brain.
instincts.
It's
Yeah.
lizard brain. It's
And so it's systemic racism is something that like a lot of adults can't seem to understand.
yeah.
So like the fact that it's like now it's these kids' responsibility to the racist laws have actually not 100% of them. There are still every now and then my girlfriend will be doing research for a case, and she'll like text me a screenshot of some law that's like still on the books somewhere that's like
Yeah.
just like straight up like black people aren't allowed to marry white people, something like that.
Yeah.
But that stuff that was hard, but kind of simple comparatively. Getting the racist laws off the books, it's like they're racist, get rid of them.
Yeah.
And now though, it's like you have this more complicated thing that you have to actually get people to understand that there are all these subtle.
Hmm.
I mean, the effects aren't subtle, but
Yeah.
the mechanisms are more complex that lead to things like, I mean, I don't really see how you could look at America right now and see on paper, look at like our prison population, the breakdown by
Yeah.
race and everything, and poverty and all that. And I mean, if somebody was just looking at it who had never heard of America or whatever, oh, this is like a racial apartheid state.
Yeah.
And, the white people are at the top. Looks like black people are at the very, very bottom. And, that's still the case. I don't even know how we got, oh, the kid called me a white fucker. The, but,
What you're saying was he was right and fully
mm,
justified. You
yeah,
are a white fucker. So
that's that technically me. Um, I mean, and, it is like, I get why, people, I think as like as a white person, in America, you have to be both understanding of the fact that like people are going to have strong feelings about what happened to their ancestors, thanks
yeah.
to our ancestors, figuratively speaking. I don't know any
Yep.
specific ancestors, but
My
yeah.
my last name is Dutch, so yeah, it's safe to say my ancestors.
Mm. I guess I don't know much about. I mean, I know like it was the Dutch who South Africa
Hmm. Yeah.
populated that. So like the did they also were they like in the early Americas like really involved in the slave trade?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um
Very
I guess that
heavily involved.
the maybe that is that why like the name of somebody with a van in their name is so associated with like wealthy, like fancy people. Is that a stereotype you're aware of?
Uh, to an extent. So I know Van, yes, but also I guess like you know Denmark probably like Von. So like Lars von Trier, the director, that
Mm.
his name is not von Trier. Like Von is like status, so he added that to his name almost like in jest,
Mm.
uh, because he's a provocateur. So
Yeah. A provocateur who I've heard enough about his movies to I don't think I'm ever gonna know. Is it a Serbian film? One of
no, that is
his?
not him. No, so
Okay.
he's done a lot of really good stuff. Really weird. Breaking the Waves is great. He did one called The House That Jack Built, which is like this 3 hour long, like deep dive into the psyche of a serial killer, but it's also like part Dante's Inferno.
Hmm.
Uh, did a movie called Antichrist, which is about a couple that lose a child. Uh,
I think that's the one I'm thinking like that there's some really like gross and
oh
dark
yeah,
stuff
it is
in that one, and maybe
extremely dark,
why I
extremely
conflated it
dark.
with a Serbian film. Have you ever seen that?
I don't want to say publicly, but yes, I have seen it.
I would say I'd say like I have no I don't know what is so fucked up about that movie. I just know like I'll occasionally see like movie reviewers saying, "No, I'm not talking about a Serbian film." It's
Yeah.
like, all right, well, it's I know I mean, I love horror. I love like body horror. So I'm a big
Yeah.
David Cronenberg and
Oh yeah.
John Carpenter fan, and I don't really like seeing gross stuff, even if it's completely realistic
Hmm.
doesn't really bother me that much, or seeing like lots of gore and stuff doesn't really
Same.
bother me that much. But when you turn like the JFK assassination, I remember one time I was watching that and I was like, or I like I just had never really like you see that clip all the time, the
Yeah.
Zapruder film, and I like looked it up on YouTube and I was just like curious, like, oh, I'm just gonna take a closer look at this. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, fuck me,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't. I was like, okay, no, I don't want to see that ever again, because it
Yeah.
is like caught on camera, like his
Yeah.
head exploding, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's oof.
No,
Anyway,
I this is a fun segue into something I do enjoy talking about. So, like Serbian film as an example is like an exercise in how far can we push the line, not for the sake of art, but how far can we push the line for the sake of pushing the line. Similar
mhm,
to like the Human Centipede movies,
mhm,
where there's no story to it, there's no substance to it. It's hey, how fucked up can we be? And that is the driving force behind people seeing it. Like, hey, this movie made someone throw up. We could throw that on a poster. People will watch it because of that. So for
mhm.
me, that rings so hollow to me. I maybe when I was like a 16-year-old edgelord and I was like, I gotta find Cannibal Holocaust because I've heard Cannibal Holocaust is like the most disgusting movie ever. And then you watch it and you're like, it's like this weird found footage thing with some really gross stuff in it, with
Mhm.
like almost like a Seinfeld esque soundtrack. Very strange. Um,
I've got to see that. I know I've seen clips of it and heard people talk about it, but I would and for similar reasons to like I'm like I just it seems too because I remember I thought that it was the thing with that movie is that they killed real animals in it, but
yeah,
then
which
it's
is
not that's not actually what happened. Is that right?
so no, they did, but Italian filmmakers did a lot of that in the 70s. There
Mhm.
was a lot of like actual animal death. No, they and it's hard to tell like what's real and what's part of the publicity for the movie. But they had a in quotations like court case where the actors had to show up in court to prove they were still alive because people thought that they actually killed people making the movie because it is a found footage movie but from the 70s.
Mhm.
So a new medium that people weren't familiar with. Same way when Blair Witch came out and people were like, oh no, this is real. These people are actually missing. Same thing happened in the 70s in Italy with this movie.
Okay. That, yeah, I mean, I guess that is that I could see that being like mostly a publicity kind
Yeah.
of thing and a good one. And like Blair Witch was, so much of that like
Was
was a
marketing.
viral thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, you are the marketer guy, right? So,
Yeah, sadly. Sadly.
well, something, I could see your podcast, like when I first kind of saw it, that you were starting it, like it's like, oh yeah, he knows how to like just get something, a good solid brand on something and make it like it has a voice, a point from the
Yeah.
get-go. It's like I could see the marketing experience there being used for something good. It's like, unfortunately, being the person who makes things nowadays, that's you have to be your own marketer most of the
Yeah.
time. So,
Yeah, no, it is. I do tell people like that is the thing I'm best at. The thing I'm best at in marketing is defining a brand.
mm,
Like, what is your story? Even stuff like a title. Like, how do you present yourself to the public with your name? And then what's your mission statement? So, like, the trailer I cut 10, 15 minutes for me to just like write down, hey, this is what I think the show is. Record it really quick and then just post it. So for me, the way I work is if I think about it too much, I won't do it. So it's like
mm,
I thought of the name, and then the next day I was like, well, I should see if the domain is available. And then when the domain was available, I was like, well, now I kind of have to do it.
Yeah.
So it was like a 3-week process from thinking of the name to recording the first episode. And then 2 weeks after that, the first episode was up. Because I'm like, no, I just want to move. I just want to go. If I think about it too much, I'll stop. Um, but then the rest of it's just talking. So that's the easy part. And also, I have no shame in like reaching out to people and being like, hey, you want to come on?
Mm.
Which is, it seems
Same,
to be
same
something
here.
that some people struggle with. But I'm like, hey, if I can't promote myself, no one else will promote me either.
Mm.
So there's no shame in being like, hey, you want to talk for an hour?
Yeah. I mean, I don't mind it. Well, with your show, whenever I interviewed you a long time ago, I thought like it's like you were very natural, good
Yeah.
interviewee, or kind of goes back and forth between being interviewee and interviewer. And I and then when I saw that you'd started a show, I was like, oh, that would be so good. And it's like it took such a long time for
Hmm.
you to start one. And I think there's like something to that like it also took me kind of a long time from being a musician, and that's one reason I think I've become very comfortable with like marketing myself. And
Yeah.
I always wanted to be the center of attention when I was a kid and stuff. And I think being a musician was one of the things that satisfied. But like yeah, it's like kind of the first thought I had was like he must have like wanted to do something and then just kind of waited for the idea to float
Hmm.
into like something that was good. And you actually, and I mean, as soon as I saw it, I was like, this is such a good idea for a show in general. And
Yeah.
yeah, so congrats,
Thanks. No,
Pops.
you were the first. Your podcast was the first one I ever did, actually,
Oh,
and
really?
then I did Jort Center a bunch of times, and I was like, this is easy. Like the recording side is easy enough. Um, and then Will and I, Will from Jort Center, have like kicked around some ideas for other shows, worked on some stuff. But in the meantime, while those things are, you know, coming to fruition, if you're developing something that's a little more than just talking for an hour, it takes a long time. So I was like, well, I've got the equipment. I've kind of learned how to do a little bit of editing. There's no reason for me not to just do something on my own while I wait for other stuff to happen. And I was looking for an outlet. Like, yeah, there's some form of creativity in this for me that I enjoy. I can't sit down and write a song with a guitar, so like I can do this. This will be a good level of fulfillment outside of my day to day job. It's a good escape. Uh, yeah, but no, 3 years was a long time because as soon as I was on your show, I was like, hey, I can do this. This
Mhm.
would be fun. But then
It's a
I
good
would think of
episode.
something and I'd be like, yeah, I don't know if that's right. If that's what I actually want to spend my time doing. And now that I'm doing it, I'm like, there's like 5 ideas I have for other podcasts I would want to do.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, you like working in marketing, you get to exercise your creative muscles in a restricted way, right? Like you're having to do stuff for other people a lot of the
I
time,
mean,
right?
my job. So I'm an account manager. So like my
Mm,
job is just talking. I do tell people like no, everybody else does the work, and then I talk about the work. That's kind of how account management runs. So I'm the face of the company to my clients. So when we get on a call, I have to be knowledgeable of everything we've been doing. So I work for an SEO company currently. So it's like, hey, here's all the keywords we're going after. Here's how your rankings are working. Here's how you're stacking up against competitors. Here's all the stuff we're doing on the technical SEO side. And then talking about their business as a whole. So like, hey, how are sales? How are your close rates? How are things trending? Where are you at looking year over year? So like my job is so much more data driven than creativity driven,
mm.
um, which is fine because I'm good at taking that information, distilling it down, and then giving it to people in a way that doesn't feel like I'm talking to them like they're dumb. I was on like a marathon 2 hour call yesterday, and it was just like store after store back to back. And it was my first call with this client since we've launched, and they don't know anything about SEO. Like, and for me, I think SEO as a whole is the most complicated version of digital marketing. Because
Yeah, I can't. It's I that w I was my title was account manager,
mhm,
copywriter, ghostwriter. Like I ghost wrote blogs for
yeah,
doctors mostly when I was doing that. But I was, it was a lot of work. And I really
yeah.
didn't like it. I mean, I got into it thinking like, oh, I'll get to be creative doing this, and
Nope.
for a few weeks, I kind of was able to do that, but like and it just turned into it's like the people they're trying to market themselves, they want the same sort of thing over and over again, and yeah, so that but SEO is always something that like I wish I understood it better. I wish I was more interested in it because like I want my videos and stuff that I
hmm
make to do well online, but yeah, I don't know. But that did you do more like writing stuff like before you kind of got put up into account manager?
No. So I went from working in a warehouse to being an account manager. Like
Oh,
that was the transition. So I was working for a company. We worked with daycares. So toilet paper and chicken nuggets were pretty much the product. So it was just like little old lady that has a mom and pop daycare would call me and be like, "Hey, here's my order," and I would have to write it down and then put it in our system, and then she gets the order the next day. So pretty straightforward. But then from that, I transitioned into working at a startup that did marketing. So I knew nothing going in. Uh, like day one, sitting in a room with another account manager, and he was kind of training me on the things we were doing. And he was like, "How familiar are you with PPC?" I was like, "I'll be honest, I don't know what that is."
I don't know what that is. I don't think.
So pay per click. So Google advertising. So like
Oh,
digital marketing 101 came in and I was like, yeah, I don't know what that is. He was like, well, we sell it and you now manage it. So we'll have to teach you what it is. So I kind of got like a crash course in all things digital marketing from there. And then over the last 10, 12 years, I've just kind of stayed in the digital lane, but I've always been on the account management side just because that's where the skill set is. It's easier for me to get on and talk about what other people have done than for me to do it myself. So there's
mm,
not much of a creative outlet in that. Um, it is really just relaying data is day to day my job. But when you're good at that, you can make it fun. Like my calls tend to be pretty lively and enjoyable. I think I get good feedback from clients. Um, because it's boring. SEO is fucking boring to talk about because you're like, hey, here's our keywords. Here's how those keywords are trending. Here's your SEM rush report. And like, all right, it's a bunch of numbers. It doesn't really mean anything until you get the context.
I mean, there's an art to making that something like that interesting or breaking it down. I mean,
Mhm.
like creative outlet. I think I just made a on MLK Day. I was thinking about something that it was just a connection I made with when I was teaching with the kids, reading an excerpt from the letter from a Birmingham City jail.
Mhm.
And which is tough for sixth graders, so it was a very short
Yeah.
thing, with lots of new vocabulary. I mean, MLK's writing is like just so like huge vocabulary,
Yeah.
lots of metaphors, and like it's so interesting to read because lots of interesting ideas in it. But I was thinking about like I have a dream and the fact that that's like the thing he's most remembered for, and I made like a little TikTok sort of just like ruminating on that like you know we we're so, I think, especially in a consumerist, capitalist society, we're so sort of driven to think of everything we do as being something transactional and
Yeah.
something that's very practical. And so, like, things like, the fact that art class or drama or music or whatever in a school is like, third tier kind of crap that they
Yeah.
like, they're always cutting funding on that stuff because they're like, oh, it's more important that the kids like learn how to code or whatever. And it's like creativity. Um, I like I remember I had a professor in college who said something about like how if if they got rid of all the like English departments and like the humanities in like colleges tomorrow, you wouldn't really see the effects
hmm
for like 20 years.
Yeah.
You would see like 10, 20 years from now, you would see it reflected in more corruption, less creativity, less empathy, like and I think there's something to that. And like we think of imagination as being something that's like little kids, like imagination, the
Yeah.
SpongeBob meme, and like little kids or people who work specifically in something that you think of as a creative field, art
Hmm.
or music or making movies or something. But it's like, creativity is, I think, lack of imagination, I think, is like one of the big problems in our society today. And probably has been in a lot of societies throughout history of like we are, a fish doesn't know that it's in water.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to think outside of, the quote that came to mind, and that was I've never read this book, but it's called Capitalist Realism, and people reference it all the time. I guess I should read it at some point if it's such a popular like leftist book, but it the quote is if you've never heard this before, be prepared to have something like weirdly resonate with you. It's easier to imagine the end of the world than it is to imagine the end of capitalism.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've heard it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that something just feels so like true about that.
Hmm.
And I think it's just that idea that like we don't, it's so hard to think outside of your education and conditioning and experiences and, making art and studying art and reading and writing and all that. Like it, helps to cultivate your imagination.
Yeah.
And I think it's like entertainment nowadays has maybe become so accessible, and things like CGI has gotten so good, and it's like there is less and less of a need for people to use their imagination,
Hmm.
or like it doesn't organically develop maybe as much as it did when we just had to be bored a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And so it's maybe more important now than ever. And just the fact that, like, what I was sort of thinking about was just that, like, the most famous thing that Martin Luther King ever said was, I have a dream.
Hmm.
And that, he's talking about, I'm imagining something
Yeah.
that doesn't exist. And I want you to like try and picture it with me. And really, I mean, John Lennon, that's what that song is about. It's like you have to see it, and you have to like in order to, or you have to try to imagine it. And if you're not, and I think like, cultivating your imagination is something that is sorely needed always.
Hmm.
And what you were saying there about like having a creative outlet, it's like it's important for that, like I think personal reasons. Like my girlfriend has she played clarinet in high school, but other than that, she's never really been into any kind of art.
Hmm.
But like, the past several years, she got really into these video games. Like we're a reversal of the stereotype of like the boyfriend who plays video games all the time. I don't play video games at like pretty much at all. I have a PS4 that I turn on once a year maybe, and play like Tony Hawk for 20 minutes. But or Spider-Man, that swinging
That.
around
Oh
is
man. Yeah.
so fun. And that's, Spider-Man. I played through that whole game. It's like the only game I've beaten the story mode and since I was in like fourth grade. But I but just like you can just sit down and for 10, 20 minutes just like swing around and have so much fun with that game. But
Yeah.
um it's like being on a ride or something. But she plays games like Animal Crossing
Hmm.
and Stardew Valley.
Yeah.
These games where you build things and you sort of like homesteading games, I think they're called sometimes.
Hmm.
And something that I just kind of occurred to me as I was thinking about her being into those, because that's another thing that seemed to me, I'm like, what the fuck would you want to play a video game where you have a farm and you're like farming radishes or whatever? Like, that sounds so boring. And I think for her, it's like it's relaxing, and then it's
Yeah.
a creative outlet. You're
Yeah.
doing something creative within the game. And then she since I knew she was into that stuff, like I got her a Lego set over Christmas of where she made a Lego Dobby from Harry Potter. That was her favorite Harry Potter character. And And she was really into that. This is kind of a gratifying thing. You get somebody a Christmas gift, and then the other day an Amazon box came that had like three different Lego sets that she had gotten. So she's like now into
You
Legos.
started something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's great, and I'd like to do that with her too, because like I don't really do a lot of like building type stuff, like physical.
Yeah.
I started working on guitars, like trying to fix up old guitars like last summer,
Hmm.
and I got into that for a bit, and now I'm kind of over it. I fixed the guitars I wanted to fix, so it's a
Yeah.
lot of work.
Yeah, and it's not like you have other things going on, So
Right.
it's
That really is that. It's like I spent so much time last summer like sanding down bone for like the bridges and stuff and on old guitars, and it's like, man, I could have been making podcasts or making music during that time, but it's like that was just what I was drawn to.
yeah.
And then in the end it turned out that so the guitar, this was my big project last summer, and it was kind of neat because it was like I was using a Dremel tool to like cut bone and stuff.
Yeah.
And this guitar is my dad got this in Vietnam, when he was there fighting
Hmm.
in Vietnam in like 1968, 69. And so this has just been a thing that's been broken sitting in my house, like my parents' house, my whole life.
Yeah.
And I finally was like, I'm gonna see if I can fix it up. And I had to do a lot to it, but it came out, I think it's probably out of tune, but I really wanted a classical guitar,
Yeah.
and that's what this is. So, or nylon string. And I was they put that Propaganda podcast I called out, or I mentioned earlier. They put out a call of like, hey, anybody have some covers they want to do for Propaganda's first album, the How to Clean Everything,
Hmm.
the anniversary of that 25-year maybe was last year, and so they wanted covers from that album, and my favorite song from that album is a song called "Stick the Fucking Flag Up Your Goddamn Ass, You Stupid Son of a Bitch." I think that's the full.
That's a that's a catchy title.
Yeah, yeah, right. It rolls off the tongue. Um, that's always been my favorite song from that album. And the song is about. Have you ever heard it? I know, like I
No,
made
I
that
haven't heard
the
that one.
cover, but yeah, I never really used it yet for anything that I've made. They just played it on their show and did like they made like an album that was made, I think, a podcast episode slash something they put up on Bandcamp to download, but
Yeah.
um, so that song though is basically the premise of it is like the singer from Propaganda was they interviewed me recently to talk about that cover, and the singer from Propaganda, his dad was in the military, my dad was in the military, he's a hardcore leftist, I'm a hardcore, like so there's some like parallels. I think maybe one of the reasons I really connect with the music, he
Yeah.
talks about that like tension and stuff, and that song is about like the first line is like, my father told me, son, it's futile to resist. You can topple ideologies, but not the armies they enlist.
Hmm.
I question the intentions of the Boy Scouts chanting war. Well, that's the sound of freedom, son, he said, free to say no more. Um, which is like, it's like a song that he wrote when he was like 17 or something. That first album is so good, but or it's weird. Anyway, the he, that one thing about that first he's recently talked about how like a couple of the songs on it, thinks there's a little bit of a racist undertone. The singer from the band is like kind of saying like, that there's a song called "Ska Sucks," and there's another song that's like it's an anti-religion song that talks about Rastafarianism, and he's
Hmm.
like, that what are you supposed to think if you're like a black kid or a Caribbean kid who like sees that there's two songs on this album that are like just broadsides against something in their culture, like,
Yeah.
and I just thought that's really cool that he like fessed up to that, and he's like, the song I wrote is racist,
Yeah.
and he but obviously didn't realize it at the time, didn't think of it that way, but anyway, so yeah, this song that I did the cover of is about a kid, like talking to his dad about and like trying to understand all of the fucked up things in the world.
Hmm.
And the second half, it just kind of turns into a thrash song about like he keeps screaming "fuck the troops to hell" in it. So it's great. Very ballsy line. But
Yeah.
the I thought it would be kind of poetic to use this guitar that my
Yeah.
dad got in Vietnam to record that song. And so that's how I did it. And I think it turned out really cool. It's kind of weird sounding, but in a good way, I think.
No, that's cool. How was that process for you of restoring that? Was there a lot of creative fulfillment in that of like switching things up? I mean, making music is still doing something with your hands, but doing it in a different way. It seems like it's less problem solving. On the last episode, I was talking to Jordan Dickerson about writing songs, and he does view it kind of as like problem solving of like, hey, I have this guitar lick in my head. How do I turn this into a song? How do I build something around this? Where the approach is like, I know what the end goal needs to be, and I have the first piece. How do I get the rest of the pieces? So how does like writing a song differ from sitting down with a Dremel and fixing a guitar?
Well, because I like working on guitars is something that I have no real experience with other than the
Yeah.
fact that I played guitar, so like I've had to fix stuff that's broken on them before. Um I it was a lot more of like a learning experience, and there was
Hmm.
something kind of relaxing about it, I think, like
Yeah.
just having this end goal in mind, but I have no schedule for that. Like I could take years to do this, or I could finish it this month. Like I'm just gonna make it as cool as I can. And so, yeah, things like I've never really been a big like doing things with my hands in the sense of like making stuff. And
Yeah.
my dad, and actually this is kind of something that I connected with my dad over, because my dad was in the military for many years, but he retired and became a farmer. But after Vietnam, he took like 7 years out of the military and was just working as a construction contractor
Hmm.
and doing and he's my whole life he's always had a wood shop and he's always like making stuff. He made it's in the living room, but there's he made a bookcase for me that's just like this beautiful art piece, really,
Yeah.
that he I'm sure never has thought of himself as an artist,
Yeah.
but he totally is. And the yeah, so it's just like it was something I was able to talk with my dad about, that
Yeah.
we're talking about like what kind of tools I'm using and stuff like that, which is something that like I've never really had that connection with him. And the and so yeah, certain things about it were like I was really surprised at how decently I was able to actually like shape the things on it. And
Yeah.
because I have very shaky hands, I don't something like fine kind of work is really difficult for me. But I something I never would have thought I would really enjoy doing that much. And that's not really the only thing. I also you can probably see it hanging on the wall right there. You see that purple guitar,
Yeah.
that Telecaster style guitar? That wasn't as much of a like DIY. I mean, it is DIY, but it wasn't like doing my own thing, because that was my dad got me that. It's like one of those kits where
Yeah.
the body and everything, it's like all just wood grain, and you have to paint it and put it together. And that was also that was educational for me, like just kind of learning how a guitar, everything's like connected in there. It's one of
Hmm.
the main reasons I wanted to do it, but also I don't have a Telecaster style guitar, and I had been really wanting to learn how to play like country style chicken picking stuff on guitar, and
Yeah.
Telecaster is the best for that. I haven't really been doing that as much lately, but I still want to get my chops up on that, because that's my favorite type of like crazy guitar solo to listen to, is a country, like
Yeah.
when somebody can like shred a country guitar solo. It's like it just has such a cool, weird. Um, there's I know I mentioned Bad Religion.
Hmm.
They have a little bit of country influence in their song. Like you can hear it somewhere in there a lot of the time. And there's one song of theirs called Modern Man that I've always loved the solo, because it sounds like, I mean, it's like I picture anybody listening out there, look up the song Modern Man by Bad Religion. It just the solo that this song opens up with a guitar solo. It's so punk rock, and it is a technical kind of solo, but it sounds like the guitar is trying to leave the guitar player's hands and he's like catching it and pulling it back to himself. And a lot of country solos kind of feel that way to me too.
Hmm.
And that's such an awesome thing when somebody's able to like the you know the sum of the parts is more, or wait, the whole is more than the sum of the parts.
Yeah.
That you know all of these little different things come together to make this experience that is so much more than just notes being played and sounding pleasant. You know, there's an
Yeah.
image that comes with it. Um, and yeah, so I've never really been a big guy. I've always, my role in bands I've been in and stuff has always mainly been singer and songwriter.
Yeah.
And I never really like worked too much on getting my guitar chops up and being able to solo and stuff. So that's another thing the past few years that I've been dabbling in a little bit is like, okay, I'm gonna get the metronome and I'm gonna try to do this like lick over and over again.
Hmm.
I made a second YouTube channel that I've posted like two things on, and I don't think it has any subscribers. It's called Haas's Music Craps. If anybody wants to go try to that, I at some point I want to start doing something with it, but I was thinking this could be just a place for me to put stuff that isn't, you know, not video essays and not like real like songs, more just like I'm talking about my gear setup or
Hmm.
doing something with like with the thing that I posted on there is the only really awesome solo that I know and can play decently is this solo from Santeria,
Hmm.
the Sublime song.
Yeah.
And so I made a thing for me to practice to with it where I just like recreated the music in GarageBand, the like rhythm track.
Yeah.
And then there's this thing in Logic where you can increasingly ramp up the tempo of something.
Hmm.
So I made this like 20-minute track where it starts off with the solo painfully slow and
Yeah.
or like the thing to play over. So you play the solo through and then it just speeds up a little tiny bit every time. And so I started trying to do more stuff like that, like stuff that I had really only done when I first early started playing music to just get a little bit of technique
Yeah.
consistent. And so things like, you know, right now mostly I live stream myself playing acoustic songs, you know, original songs and covers. And but something I've done a little bit of and I want to get better at doing like an improv like I have an electric drum kit now. And something like, you know, get behind the kit and have like a little pedal that will record a loop, like play a
Hmm.
beat, then go up and pick up the bass, play something there, then go
Yeah.
pick up the guitar and just like keep creating a loop and just like building a song through like improvisation.
Yeah.
And so it's something I love doing with like my guitar pedal, you know, looper pedal and stuff. But I think I feel like when you do something like that, when it's just instrumental music, you really have to be good. You've got to
Yeah.
be impressive for that to be interesting for anybody to watch. And, you know, it's
Yeah.
like I sing my songs. I think probably the most attractive thing about them or the thing that I put the most thought into is the lyrics.
Hmm.
And so that's my hope, like playing acoustic stuff, is that that's going to showcase the lyrics more.
Yeah.
And the songs that I choose to cover are generally ones that are like, and more people need to either not enough people know this song or the version of this song that most people know, you can't really understand the lyrics to it. So I want to do something
Hmm.
that kind of highlights them a little bit more.
Yeah. That's awesome, dude. You have no lack of creative output going on. It's impressive.
Well, thank you. I do. I'm just like very restless
Yeah.
on that kind of stuff. So, and I think like something I think I was maybe at the very beginning of this conversation going to bring up was like how you know, if the oh right when I when I was talking about people who watch Twitch, this very beginning, the like people who just want to be famous for the sake of being famous or
Hmm.
want to just be a content creator because it seems fun. I think that's usually not gonna be successful because
Yeah.
you get bored with it and you're not gonna be putting the love and work into it. And
Yeah.
so it's so important to stick to the things and keep, if you haven't found it yet, like keep looking for the things that you genuinely want to do. And the stuff about it being, the marketing aspects of it, the stuff about, how many people are watching this, like
Mm-hmm.
that, make that secondary, focus on not just making something that you are proud of, making something that you can get really joy and meaning out of working on. And I think that's why I've been able to stick with, to an extent, the various things that I've been doing lately. Is And I mean, really, when I went, I was in bands. We played, we would, whenever we were playing a lot, we'd be playing 2, 3 weekends a month. Or I'd be, every other, going back and forth between my band and playing bass with somebody for hire.
Mm-hmm.
And when that stopped, I went and did just standard white guy with a humanities degree thing, and went and taught English in China for a little bit. And I and that, when I did that, our band went on hiatus, and we never really came back together.
Yeah.
We've done a couple of little things where we did like 500 songs for kids here in Atlanta. But for the most part, it's I just have not played live music for the past 10 years. And I was really, really depressed. And I mean, I've always kind of struggled with like anxiety and depression and different like mental health things. But um, I realized, like, after a while, like I was getting real deep into just dark holes
Mm-hmm.
after a few years of, and it was like I felt kind of guilty about it. I'm like, my life is good. I have a girlfriend who I love. We have, we live together, and we have do fun things together. I love talking to her. Um, and I my job isn't horrible and all this. And but like I think I realized, once I sort of stumbled into making things again, that like
Yeah.
I need this creative outlet, and I need to be putting it out into the world. And it is what like just motivates me all the time. I'm When I'm at work with the students, I'm motivated because I'm right there with the human beings.
Yeah.
Um, but that's only a small part of, like, I just doing a job that I don't know, something fulfilling. It's got to be fulfilling in some way, either
Mm-hmm.
interesting, or feel like I'm doing something to, not just leech off of the world,
Yeah.
give something back, or try to, at least.
That, honestly, I think that's a good way to wrap things up. It's a good summation of really everything we've been talking about. And it is a really great. We completed the story circle. We ended where we began. So.
Right. I mean, it's like I tell my students, like, no, you got to actually listen for my whole rambling thing I'm about to do here. You got to listen from I promise you, I'm bringing this back around, even if I don't really know how I'm going to do that at the beginning of it. But
But you stuck the landing. We did it. We
yeah,
ended exactly where we began. So
I think it was good.
perfect.
Maybe people can follow the thread. I was in tangent city here, but
Cool. All right. Talk to you soon.
peace out.
Thanks for listening. Give it 5 stars, because my dad is awesome and cool.